Hello, everybody. Welcome, Michael Bunker Live, trying YouTube again. I put up YouTube videos all the time, but I have tried to go live on YouTube probably, I don't know, half a dozen times. And for some reason, it has never worked. So, hello, if you're here, go ahead and type something into the chat. If you want to, say hi. Let me know where you're located. I've got quite a few things to talk about, but not even quite a few things to talk about. But I want to be here to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. Today's been a good day, a little cool, low 70s, pretty nice. It was actually really cold this morning, low 40s. We don't have air conditioning or regular heating, so we kind of closed all the windows and kept the heavy cover on this morning. It was probably closer to about 40. Now, this thing is saying that I am unable to connect to the chat. So I don't know if that's true or not. Last time, I think that was one of the problems, that and the sound. So I'm going to type and see what's going on here. So I don't know why the chat would not be working. We'll see what we got. And that's one of these things. If you're out there and you can chat, type into the chat and let me know. This is what happens with me. I don't know what it is, because YouTube seems to work for everybody, and it seems to be supposed to be pretty instinctive way to operate it. You just hit go live like you do on Facebook, but I always have a problem. So it says that the chat is not working. I'm not seeing any chats come up. So if that doesn't happen, I don't know what to say. I have tried and tried to do YouTube, but there is always a problem. And I don't know, maybe somebody out there knows what the deal is. Because I don't. Let's see what we got here. Let me know if you saw, is the chat working? If it's not working, if it's obviously not working because I'm not seeing any chat, if you are following me on Facebook, you could send me a Facebook private message, and perhaps that will work. I hate this. I really do. This ruins every attempt I have to do a video, is that you just can't get on there and have it work. So I'm just going to go ahead and go ahead, and hopefully at some point somebody can let me know if the chat is absolutely not working, because it says that it's not. If the sound is working, if the audio is working, I don't know why this wouldn't work. All right, so we are in the very end of March. The coronavirus thing is still going on, although it seems that some items are making appearance in the grocery stores that had been difficult to get before. My son went to town yesterday, and the big grocery stores he went to did not have toilet paper. We're not out of toilet paper, and we don't need toilet paper, but he was just checking, because that's kind of been like a hallmark of whether things are working or not. And so he was able to, at Aldi, they had small little 4-packs, and you could get like one per person or something. Like, hold on, somebody's pinging me. Maybe I can get some information. Nope, that's something else. And so it says that it's still telling me that the chat is not working. And I don't understand it. I'm going to go on and keep talking, but if somebody can help me, if anybody out there does YouTube regularly and there's something I should have done, then it just says unable to connect to chat. Please try again later. If the video is working, and it seems it is, because there's people watching. I got a message from Gary before I started, said, well, alrighty then, ready when you are. But then the next thing says unable to connect to chat. So hold on just a minute. We're going to see what's going on. He says he can see the chat, but I can't. So I have no idea why I cannot see the chat. If it's working, I'm sorry. I cannot see any. I can see my own comments. I can see the first comment from Gary, but I'm not getting any other comments. So the only other thing I can do is if you guys want to hold it here for just a second, I'm going to get my pad and maybe I can follow it with it muted, or I could do it maybe here on my phone and maybe I can see the comments. It's so frustrating. I don't have the patience really to do this. So we'll see if this works. Maybe I can watch the okay, so now I can see the comments on here, but I cannot see them live. All right, man. So appreciate you guys that are here. Glad you can see the chat. So now I can at least see your comments. Maybe I'll miss a few because it's really tiny. I got my glasses up here, but I'd have to go back and forth. All right. So my son went to town. He was able to get a couple of rolls of toilet paper. Like I said, it's not something we were at all really concerned about. If you want to know my opinion about the toilet paper crisis, I've done 4 or 5 videos where I've talked about it. Go back. There's one of them called Toilet Paper Zombies. Definitely watch that one. But to me, it's just been a judge to understand what's happening with the supply chain and how things are working out. So so there's that, and from some anecdotal evidence, people talking to me, there's some things kind of starting to show up in the stores. And so that led me to what I probably should be talking about, which is normalcy bias. You're going to see people starting to think that things are going to go back to normal because they're able to find things at the store. I know a lot of areas are still on lockdown. In Texas, we are not, although they have suggested that people stay home. We're still able to get out and go to the store if we need to. And I know in some places, I guess going to the store is still fine, but there's a term in psychology called normalcy bias. Some of you may be already familiar with it, but basically normalcy bias explains why most people, and when I say most people, I use the term the mass man, does not prepare for disasters, does not think bad things can happen to them, are not prepared for most types of crisis or cataclysmic events. Even when they happen, they remain blinded completely as to how bad things could get or what things they should be doing, and they refuse to do things that are beneficial or intelligent. And they even when things are obviously bad, they will default to the idea that all they have to do is get through this thing, and then everything's going to go back the way it was. I use the term ceteris paribus fallacy. If you watch my videos, you'll hear me say that because it's actually more accurate than normalcy bias. And I wanted to explain a little bit about normalcy bias and how normalcy bias is actually working in this situation and is going to continue to work in this situation. Hello, Scott. Hello, Brady. Hello, everybody. Just say hi and be glad to answer your questions and comments when they come up. So normalcy bias, or the ceteris paribus fallacy, ceteris paribus just means all things remaining equal, is amplified in modern advanced technological or technicist societies because most of the people that are alive today have been born into or incubated in a system that they don't have to explain, they don't have to understand, they don't know what it took to make it exist. But there's this infrastructure that exists that has operated as a 72-degree comfort womb their entire life. And since their life is all they know, they're not historians, they're not people who actually have gone out to experience things outside of their life, then that is normal. That is, to them, that exists as solidly as the Grand Canyon. There's a book that I would recommend called The Revolt of the Masses by Jose Ortega y Gasset. I'll put a link to it in the description after I get done with this. And that book talks about the mass man and how the mass man really has no concept of civilization other than that they exist in it, and it is a skyscraper and or a taxi cab or the internet exists to them just as naturally as a tree or the Grand Canyon. It just exists. There's no real inquisitiveness about what it took, the levels of civilization. Now, some people can play a game on a computer where they have to go through the levels of civilization, but it's very artificial and it's not real. There's not real plagues. There's not real death. There's not real revolutions and those type of things. And so let me check here real quick. All right. See, it seems to me that the real stuff hit the fan scenarios when the banks start going under. Yeah, and even if they don't go under, if they stop letting you get out, and some of that has already started happening, it's not been reported. I've had anecdotal reports from people themselves, people who I know and I trust, who have had difficulty getting certain amounts of cash out. And so with the ceteris paribus fallacy or the normalcy bias, people are born into a civilization with zero concept. The reason why you have so many young people today that are out there demanding this and demanding that and saying we deserve this, or, you know, healthcare is a right, is they have zero understanding of what it took to create this incubator in which a living person can come into being with very little struggle, with very little hardship, real hardship, with very little resistance, with very little of the if you want to call it evolutionary challenges that brought that incubator into existence. And so this creates an artificial view of reality. The reality is not on par with the history of the world or even in the history of the last 200 years. And so I try to explain in my books that if you just took somebody back 70 years, 80 years, we had a great old friend here in Central Texas named Homer, who came over. He was a millionaire, but came over. We first moved out here. We were, and still are, dirt poor. We were living in a tent on the land, completely off grid, no air conditioning, no running water, no nothing. And we had just built this little teeny cabin that was 10 by 16. And we had these fields that were just completely filled with Johnson grass. This had come up and they were completely, I mean, maybe I had maybe 6 acres of Johnson grass. And Homer pulled up in his truck and he said, "Hey, do you want me to bale this Johnson grass for you? And I'll do it." You know, usually they do it on what called on the halves, which they get half the hay, you get half the hay. But he not only gave us half the hay, but he paid us for what he took, which is completely not normal. That normally does not happen. And then he became a friend, and he would come over, and we'd see Homer come pulling in, and my children were small at the time, and he'd come pulling in with 4 bicycles or something like that. And but he was telling me that, and he died not too many years ago, but he was telling me that, you know, when they first moved out to this area, there was no electricity. Electricity as a maxim has only been around for about, in this area, for 70 or 80 years. Electricity was used in the 1890s, but as early as 1930, 1933, 1934, most of the country still did not have electricity. In fact, the Rural Electrification Act and the Tennessee Valley Authority and all that kind of stuff didn't happen until right before my parents were born. And so in one of my books, it's a short story that's called All I Can Be. I tell the story of FDR, who had a cabin or a resort in Georgia, and how we use the term, today it would be considered illegally. He would be probably impeached, but he ran underground power lines while they were electrifying Atlanta. he ran power lines. I think it was to Toccoa, Georgia, or someplace around there. In the middle of the night, they ran them all underground so that his place could have electricity, even though nobody else had it. So let me check the messages here real quick. But that just lets you know that even electricity is, I mean, my father just turned 77. He was born in 1943. 8 to 10 years before he was born, this area didn't have electricity, and they didn't have electricity in most of rural America. And so that's new. But when you're born into this incubator of everything is available, everything is right there. There's no resistance. There's no struggle. There's no then even people think that they've gone through hardship. They haven't gone through hardship historically. You haven't lived in Europe during the 100 Years' War, when army after army after army marched through, burned your fields, took your men to war, raped the women, and then you barely cleaned up and got another crop planted, and here comes another army. So that type of resistance hasn't existed. Hold on just a second. Let me see what we got here. Oh, yeah. Bank branch is closed except by appointment. Our bank branch is closed, the inside of it. I think you can still use the drive-through. Communities right now are spread far apart because travel is easy and job requirements make it necessary, but it's a weaker structure not to have people nearby you can go to for help. Yes. All right. Hello, Old Country Farming Home and Gardeners Guild. That sounds interesting. Alexander Bortz from Facebook. Good to see you, Alexander. All right. Appreciate you guys coming. I'm glad this is working. I have no idea why my live chat on my screen is not working. I wish there was a way to reboot it. It says pop out chat. So I'm going to try. Oh, I got it. Let me see if I do restore chat, if it comes back. Nope. I got to do pop out chat. So give me just a second and we could be in business. Yeah, there we go. Man, fantastic. All right. So we're talking about normalcy bias, and I'm going to get into, stuff hits the fan scenarios and where we are and updates and all that. But I wanted to describe that because it affects you. You are, whether you like it or not, part of this civilization, and 99 point some percent of the individuals in that civilization are under a strong delusion that, first of all, that nothing like this could ever happen. That was the first delusion. Even though some of us have been saying it for 20 years, have been, I have been very, very centered, or I have not said a lot of I told you so, because people don't want to hear that right now. And second of all, it doesn't change anybody's mind. And as I was just talking about with the ceteris paribus fallacy, if I have been right, and I have for 20 years, including about 9/11, including about the how the wars we would fight after 9/11 would roll out. And on a video, I said, we were going to Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Iran, and all of these things. It doesn't matter. And there are a lot of people here that are going to watch this video that have been following me for 20 some years, who know that I've been saying this for 20 some years. But the masked man said it was impossible, that this was never going to happen, because they will never let it happen. And I'm not, again, ever commenting on the coronavirus. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not an expert. I don't know. All I know is how people act and how people react. And in my book, Surviving Off Grid, I talk about the fact that this was inevitable. And so, and whether it's this or there's a dozen other of these things, EMPs and other things. And when you talk about them, even if you talk about them directly from congressional testimony, from experts, they will say it's not going to happen. They won't let it happen. They have too much skin in the game. And of course, they is the bankers and the powers that be. But there's two things you're missing. One thing is they don't control anything. Uh, they do. In my worldview, God controls things, and they don't. The second, and if you don't even believe in God, they still don't control anything. The second thing that you're ignoring is that they may want this to happen. And so that's not a conspiracy theory. We don't know. That's just a low amount of ego. You have to have a tremendously high ego to think because of you, because of who you are supernaturally, that nothing bad can happen while you're alive. That no, even though our world is our world history is replete with major natural disasters, unnatural disasters, wars, plagues, genocides, all over the world. Just because this one experiment has, for most of Western civilization, has created this incubator of affluence and peace for a period of time, that somehow nothing bad can happen to you, that you're special. I just ask you to open up a book, man. Just read it, because something sun flare could EMP the whole earth. Yeah, and we wrote a book about that called Wick, which I'll hold up in just a minute. This is Surviving Off Grid. This, hopefully all of you know about it and you would read it. But I go through the just-in-time system of supply chain. I go through the history of civilizations. The very thing I'm talking about, normalcy bias, is in here, and all of that stuff is in here. You can read about it. And so, there's a trip mechanism in people when because they have normalcy bias, number one. Second, because they are entirely narcissistic and they believe that they are special, even if they would never say that. They believe that either they're God's chosen one or something. And I'm not talking about salvation. I'm talking about the fact that somehow they are supernaturally protected from everything, while other people of the same faith are murdered or genocided, or killed in their churches, like in Rwanda. So there's a very special narcissism for Western people, especially Americans, about why nothing bad could ever happen to them. And so that is kind of the foundation of normalcy bias. And normalcy bias has levels or different. And I mentioned a few of them. And that is, first of all, nothing bad will happen. But if something bad happens, they will take care of it. They will protect me. But if they don't, then it won't last very long. And then we're going to go back to normal. And if it doesn't, then something's going to happen. I wrote a book with an absolute disaster scenario that totally wiped out technology, like it happened in Rome. The technology in Rome was so advanced that most people don't even understand it. Unless you've watched a few videos on the History Channel or something about how they built that or whatever, about Rome. Rome had air conditioning. Rome had automatic doors. Rome had shopping malls. Rome had all running water from 25 or 50 miles away. They had just-in-time delivery of all their goods and services. Most of the stuff that we have today, although it operated differently, it didn't operate on electricity, but it was actually more. Their roads still exist and are still usable. Their roads are better than our roads. And yet that technology disappeared. And only 100 years after the fall of Rome, there were goats and sheep grazing in the Colosseum. 400 years after the fall of Rome, people looked at the Colosseum and thought it was that aliens had built it. And so I wrote a book with Chris Awalt called Wick that explained this same type of scenario, where basically the technology was wiped out. It totally disappeared. And only 20 years after this disaster, people were living like it was the Dark Ages, kingdoms and all those type of things. And you should have seen the emails and stuff I got. People were absolutely, completely flummoxed. They were like, wow, how could this happen? Somebody would know how to make a nuclear reactor. Even though, I explained the book, 90% of the people died. It was an EMP followed by a nuclear exchange. There was layers of things that happened. But people, their normalcy bias was so strong that they still defaulted back to the fact that somebody is going to fix it. If we just hold on, somebody's going to fix it. And here's the thing: somebody might. This thing may just go away. Maybe we all stay home for 2 weeks, 2 months, a year. They're saying 12 to 18 months, and things revert to a form of. They will never revert to normal. They're never going to go back to the way they were. There's too many things that they can take advantage. They, being government and people who desire power over others, will take advantage of. That fundamentally things are going to change. And so, but just like after 9/11, a form of normalcy could return. And that's absolutely within the realm of possibility. Our ego should not be so high that we think that we know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. But it's really, really, really narcissistic to think that because of some special characteristic of yours that things couldn't get worse. The fact is that historically, that doesn't bear up. Civilizations collapse. The history of civilization is a history of empires rising and then falling. We are not on a flat plane increase of knowledge or technology or anything else. I don't believe we're more technologically advanced than past civilizations. I just think it seems that way because we. I wrote about it in a book I haven't published yet called Futurity, but the idea that somehow we've in just a very let's say 1907. I'm going to get to your comments in just a minute. 1907, let's go back a few more years. Let's say 1901. My grandmother was alive. So 1901, we didn't have automobiles. We didn't have airplanes. Electricity had been invented, but nobody had it. New York City didn't have electricity. For the most part, if you look at clothing, shelter, heat, light, the means of communication, etc., most people lived exactly like they lived in the 1700s. They lived exactly like they lived in the 1500s. There might have been a little bit more opulence. Civilization had developed much like it has now to the point where people were able to live in cities and ship in goods and services and all these things for city dwellers. But as far as the basics of life, people lived like they had lived 400, 500 years earlier. Within 12 years, we had airplanes, we had cars, railroads, high-speed railroads, telecommunications, telegraph, all of these things within 12 years, by 1912, 1915. That was a change in the world unlike anybody that alive at the time had ever even thought about. And we did the same thing going from 1993 to today with the internet and all this. Those of us who were born without the internet existing, or who have lived half of their life without it existing and only half of their life with it existing and only the last 10 years with it being in the form of what it is now, know that this stuff is new. It's just new. And so, we've gone through this stuff before, and you can look at things and you can see, but people who are my youngest daughter, who this has always been. There's always been instant communication. There's always been a device that has every answer to every question you can possibly ask. Every movie, every TV show, completely available at all times. And there's a tendency to think that stuff exists naturally. That a trombone is as natural as a bush or grass, or that the internet is that natural. All right, let me read some questions here. It's funny how COVID-19 was laughed at by most people, and then a switch flipped, and now people are chastising each other for not staying indoors. Yeah, that follows the whole normalcy bias thing. There was and people were joking about it, and then I was taking people to task. Everybody knows for joking about it and for joking about toilet paper and all this kind of stuff. And I did videos where I rebuked people for that. And I got these messages, and they're like, "It's just a joke. We're all having fun here. It's gallows humor." Gallows humor I like and I can accept, but when the humor is directed towards policy, then I have a problem. You know, the people who are like, there should be a law. And so there's already enough law is going to come out of this thing that you will never be free in any sense. You haven't really been in your life, but you know, whatever freedom you did experience is going to be less. But you're right. It's switched like that. And then even now, there's still this kind of bifurcation in the society about people that think it's all really a hoax or it's all a conspiracy. And then the people who think this is it, this is end of the world scenario or something like that. But you find most of the people are in this idea that if I just have 2 months worth of Hot Pockets and Oreos and Easter Peeps in my apartment, where the water comes in through a pipe, the electricity comes in through a cable, and everything that it's needed for life and survival is provided for me instantaneously when I flip on a light switch or flip on the faucet, these people still think it can't get any worse. And not only can it, but it very likely will. At the same time, I haven't got to the whole scenario as I see it playing out, but I'll get to that. Let me go back over here to comments. Okay, I just saw a bunch of cattle. There's like 7 calves running by. That's always funny. All right. You can hear them. It was like a little stampede, but it was all the small calves. How long will it take for people to get tired of staying indoors and start just trying to go out about their lives? It's already happening. Once they go to a store and the store is fully stocked and everything's there, there are things that mitigate in both directions. I think, and I could be wrong, but I think we just had like a country music star die. There's a bunch more cattle. Now they're all running. I don't know if they were just racing each other or what. Wish you guys could see this. This is we raise pure Longhorn cattle. There's only about 4,600 of them in the world, and there's about 30 of them running by me right now. So I guess a country music star died of the coronavirus. The more we hear these stories, the more some people are gonna be alerted. But at the same time, when people go to a grocery store and they don't have to wait in line and they don't have to ask when the toilet paper is going to be there or whatever products they're buying, some idea of the normalcy bias is going to kick in, and then people are going to go out and not stay home, and they're going to start demanding. And I'm not taking a position on what anybody should do or what any state should do. I hope that Texas remains open. I hope that people be intelligent and be safe. But I hope that Texas doesn't lock down. I just don't think that it's necessary, especially in the rural areas. Most people already social distance. So we'll see how that goes. All right. God bless Mr. Bunker. Hey, thank you. I need all the blessings I can get. Got to get off YouTube and finish my chicken shopping. Good idea. Good idea. Good to see you. In Ur of the Chaldees, back in Abraham's day, they had running water, public schooling, and even museums. That's Trice. Hello, Tracy. Great article today. Everybody go see Tracy's article. If you don't know, my daughter Tracy O'Neill, her blog is the Yellow Rose, and I put a link to it on my Facebook, facebook.com/offgrid, and you'll see her article that was out today. It was fantastic. Very well pleased and happy to read it. So, Ur of the Chaldees and Abraham's day. I think I put a scenario in my book Futurity that hasn't been released yet. Hello, Pat. That I think we had advanced technology. Here's my posit. So I'll tease you with this. Hello, Danielle. And that is, the more advanced a society gets, the more temporary and throwaway houses that are made of stone, castles, 800, 1,000 years ago, the castle or the house or a remnant of it still stands. They were built solidly, right? And then if you go forward 500-600 years, then you had heavy construction made from masoned rock. Okay, a lot of those structures are still around. Churches, buildings. Wars can wipe those things out, but for the most part, they're still around. Fast forward to the early 1900s, houses were built solidly. We didn't have dimensional lumber so much, but you went to a sawmill and you had boards cut to fit. A lot of those houses still around. You go to the 1950s, 1970s, 1980s, you have houses that are now starting to be made with cheap 2x4s and sheetrock. To go to today, where you have even cheaper materials that are used that are in those houses, they last 10, 20 years. People knock them down and they build something else. And, things in general are more throwaway. You have recycling introduced in advanced societies that didn't exist. You had recycling just out of instinct. People use things, but as far as recycling as a systemic thing, those things didn't exist until the society became so advanced. Things now you have this move towards no more plastic, no more, things become more and more throwaway. So in my book, things became so throwaway that like you didn't have a computer. You just had like a roll, almost like a roll of toilet paper. It was plastic, rip off sheet. You could read a text or whatever, and you use it and you throw it away and it just degraded. And so following that logic, following the path of civilization, if you start with building with stone, stuff was written on papyrus and heavy cloth and sheepskins. And those things lasted for hundreds of thousands of years to where we are today, where things are becoming more throwaway. It's very, very difficult to find materials from even 20 years ago, to where if this civilization went on another 100 years on the pace and on the track that it's on, there would be almost no trace of that society. It would disappear. If there was a cataclysm, it would disappear. So the theory is in my book is what happens if there was a great, highly technological society before the one that we're existing in now. What if during the time between Adam and Noah, that civilization was actually more technologically advanced than ours is? And I'm just saying that as an understanding of normalcy bias, that just because you look around and you think that the civilization around you is solid, is natural, a bridge, for example, let's just take a look at the Brooklyn Bridge. People cross over that every day. They don't think about it. There's no thought process. So they march, they protest, they scream and they yell about what they're due and what they're owed and what things the government should be doing and who's going to save us, and no one's going to let any bad things happen. But they don't even know what it took to get civilization from zero to the thousands of years of advancement it took and work and civilization and all that to get to the point where you have a Brooklyn Bridge. And so that's where we are. And so let me get into what and by the way, typing questions and comments I can see the chat now. I know how to do it now. So typing questions and comments, I'd love to talk about whatever you want to talk about. So where are we now? So with COVID, we are in a situation where there's been a shock to the system. A lot of people are uncomfortable. A lot of people are afraid. But we are 2 weeks into the uncomfortableness now, and people are starting to think that perhaps we've gotten through it. Even though we haven't, we're 2 more weeks from the peak, if you listen to the experts. And more people are going to have people they know die. Had a scare yesterday. Really good friend of mine, somebody who's been very helpful to me. His wife was like rushed to the emergency room, couldn't breathe. And of course you think the worst. And then we were praying for it and hoping everybody was going to pray. And it turned out not to be coronavirus. It was something else. So as more people experience firsthand losing loved ones across the country or whatever, or in their neighborhoods, in their city, there's going to be some realization set in that's going to be counteracted by what they see and what they experience with Some of the stuff is like here in Texas, they just opened it up where you can pick up alcohol or they can deliver it to your house. And, you can have food delivered and all this, and people are, it's like a camping trip. It's like when the power went out when you were 7 or 8 and your parents made it fun, maybe you built a fort or something like that and you had candles. And, for us, my children wouldn't experience that because that's the way we lived all the time. So, but, there's this kind of bifurcated idea that things are bad and they're getting worse and worse and worse over here. But over here, you go to the store and there's toilet paper, there's no lines or whatever. And there's a tendency in the human mind to think that, everything's just going to, and we hope it gets back to normal. But let me tell you, out of everybody here, everybody watching this, even after this is over, nobody wants things to get back to normal more than me. I got a movie deal that was moving forward, that was almost certainly going to get made about my book, and got a trip out to Hollywood, got to meet the director, and things were moving forward. We were talking about, possibly filming starting very soon, production starting very soon. That was all interrupted by this. So I'm not sitting here going, boy, I sure hope things get bad. Nobody hopes things get better more than me. So, but, we have to be intelligent. We have to think. We have to take in all the data, and we have to look at it, and we have to add in the mass man and our understanding of human nature. And that's where we are. We're looking at, hello, Australia. Good to see you. I'm glad to have you here. I've been there to Australia. Me and my wife and daughter went to Australia in 2002, Western Australia. All right. So that's where we are. So I was talking about the fact that, where we are now is that things are starting to look both worse and better, depending on how you look at it. People are starting to speculate about, when are we going to get out? When are we going to get to go do things? I think that's going to be dampened. I think reality is going to set in within the next 2 weeks that things are probably not going to be looking much better. I'm not prognosticating. I'm not prophesying. I'm just saying, I think there's some hard times that we're looking at. All right. So what was your early life like? How did you get started homesteading? My early life was standard American or suburban, starting in lower class, moved up to middle class. We started homesteading. My wife and I were both working, and we didn't like just not being home with our daughter at that time. And so we moved to a smaller town, Lubbock, Texas, from Dallas. And we didn't like that either. So we moved to a smaller town and a small little farm, 5-acre farm. And we just, as we started to do some farming and all that, we started talking about the concept of going off grid. And so that was, we moved to our little farm started a little farm in 1997 in West Texas. And then we moved here to Central Texas in 2005. And that's when we went off grid. So we've been off grid for 15 years. All right. So anyways, I think that if I was going to be gambling, and I'm not, I would think that we're going to see some rougher things than people are expecting. And one of the things is going to be this normalcy bias. And so people begin to get frantic. The reason that you see riots or the reason you see panic is because of normalcy bias. When the shield finally comes down, or the veil comes down, and people really see lack, or they see lack of control, or they see a systemic collapse. To me, there are triggers, and one of the triggers is if the internet goes down, which is very, very possible. If power starts being spotty, I did a whole video on these two things. Look through the last videos about why the power would go down, why the internet could go down, All of these things are possible. I'm not saying they're going to happen, but they're possible. People are already seeing concerns about the banks getting money, being able to get money when you need it. I saw the trial balloon starting to go about hello, Montana, about cash being a vector for the disease. And so we very, very seriously could see some major systemic change, people not allowing cash, forcing cashless transactions. These are all triggers, and I could probably, if I sat down, I could probably think of about 20 of them that will cause people to panic. The masked man is no different. This morning we have 4 sheep, and we were trying to divide them, 2 into one pasture and 2 into another pasture. The 2 that we want to mate into one pasture and the other 2 males into another pasture. And sheep are predictable, but they are wild. And when you get them moving, a ram can run right through a fence that you wouldn't think a car could run through. And they spook very, very easily. And you can calmly get them moving. But if they break to run, just like these longhorns that just ran by, they can do a lot of damage. And so that's how the masked man is. The masked man's predictable, easily manageable if he's not spooked. The entire purpose of government is to mitigate panic. That's what they do. That's their what do they call it? I'll come up with it in a minute. There's a phrase for it. The reason for existence, raison d'être, is what it is. That's the reason for existence. And that's what they try to do. That's why they lie. That's why they manipulate. That's why they control. That's why they never let a good crisis go to raison d'être. I beat you to it. I didn't see it till just now. So when I said it, you hadn't typed it in yet. And so, they do the things they do because they realize that they have to mitigate panic. But there are these triggers that are out there by a skosh. So, power going out, internet going out, complete lockdown, quarantine, where you aren't allowed to leave the house, and then people run out of stuff, and perhaps the efforts to deliver goods and services is interrupted. Truck drivers getting sick and not being able to deliver goods, grocery stores running out of things, banks not letting you have your own money into the cash society, other draconian measures. Inner city folk are more susceptible to panic since they are packed so close together, and the panic can feel. Yeah, anytime you have people, city folk in general are more susceptible to panic. They have a I talked about the fact that the human mind doesn't realize that it's in this little incubator of false life, plastic life, but there's a subconscious that exists that does realize it. That's when the panic surfaces. So let's just take a guy, we're going to call him Joe, and Joe lives in an apartment in Manhattan, and he makes good money. He has lived his entire life in New York, but he got himself an apartment. He likes to go out in the evenings, have a drink, eat pizza by the slice, walk to any store that could have anything he could possibly want, never gets off the island, lives there in this very artificial habit trail life until he's 28, 29 years old. And so he's living in this normalcy bias where everything just exists. Everything is there. You have to work. He has sorrows. He's sad because he lost his girlfriend. It's not like there's nothing that affects him or that he's an emotional robot. He thinks that he's got hardships. He thinks that it's hard sometimes to make his rent. Perhaps he struggles with other things, but he doesn't question his existence in a system that requires millions of other people to pick dots at the right moment to line things up so all the goods and services that he needs are available when he needs them. He doesn't understand that, and he thinks it is as natural. He thinks that it is a natural right. Those things are a natural right. This is why you can have people like AOC go, housing is housing is a right. Healthcare is a right. Complete lack of understanding of what it takes and how many other people have to be trained to the treadmill to cause the buttons and levers to be pulled to cause this thing to work. And there are frailties in that system. There are weaknesses in that system, and those frailties can happen. Normalcy bias is called that because it ignores the reality of the frailties and the weaknesses in the system and the lack of redundancy and things like that. And when those things give out, there's a subconscious man in Joe who knows. He knows. He walks into the house, he flips on the light, it just comes on. There's no thought. No thought crosses through his head and says, see, this is what happened to me. When you ask, how did I get off homesteading? This is what happened to me. The power didn't come on. And I would go, okay. And I would actually think about, well, what does it take for a power plant to exist? A power plant there's a reason that power plants don't exist in or come to exist in tremendous third world countries, because there's other hardships that you're dealing. They're dealing with other hardships, starvation and everything else, warlords and all this kind of stuff. Nobody's like, everybody stop the warlording. We're going to put a box right here and we're going to build a power plant and we're going to run electricity to everybody. That takes somebody from outside coming in to do that. And when that has happened, places that has happened, that can be the beginning of a form of civilization. And so, that's basically what's happened with Joe. Is Joe has not asked the question, how does that power get to my house, to my apartment? I flip a switch on, lights come on. I turn on the faucet, water comes out. Something happens. There's some construction and there's a line break, and Joe is inconvenienced. He loses water for a while. Most likely, like Winston Churchill said, he'd dust himself off. He's not going to think too hard about it. He's just going to be mad. He's going to be mad. Why don't they fix this? Why don't they fix it? Because he has a natural right, he believes, to clean, drinkable water. Forget the fact that no human had that right for the history of the world until Joe. Forget the fact that even in the world today, a huge majority of the people do not have readily available drinking water coming right out of the tap whenever they want it. And so, you have Joe, who he gets upset because he deserves water. He deserves, and they say stupid things like, well, we can put a man on the moon. Why can't we have this or that? And then you see people that are ridiculously rich, and some of them I legitimately should not be through actions that are not the government. The government has perpetuated this type of thing, but that doesn't mean people shouldn't be rich. I'm just saying there are people that have billions and billions of dollars because of government deal, Perot kind of things, And so so Joe's a voter. Joe gets to vote. Joe gets to vote on things that affect people who actually have to produce their own. We have to produce the water and the electricity that Joe consumes. Joe's a consumer, not a producer. He doesn't produce anything. And so my whole point is that so Joe's mentality as part of the mass man, it's like a school of fish, right? They get spooked, or those sheep, they get spooked and they run. When those things collapse, when these artificial supports, the artificial veil of civility rips, and he gets to look through the veil and he sees that he's been wrong. he's been wrong about all of this. Then what happens? Joe becomes an animal. He becomes an animal, and he's probably not going to survive, but he becomes an animal. And that happens more the life is, the higher the percentage of the life is consumption, the more that person is going to react violently and in a rash, unintelligent, mass man way. The more the life is based on production, then the more that person really is only concerned about how Joe acts. Out here where I live right now, I have zero concern about coronavirus. Not that I can't get it. I can get it just like anybody else. But I have zero concerns about it. I'm not concerned that, if I could get, there's a million other, I could get tetanus. I could get, I eat food that's 4 or 5 years old. I could get, I don't know, botulism and die. There's a million ways to die on a farm. That should be a song. So coronavirus is just another way, but I'm not concerned about coronavirus. I'm concerned about Joe and a million Joes all at the same time, realizing that they are parasites for them. I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. I mean, they consume off of a system that has been designed that way. It's been designed so that more and more people can live without producing. And so what happens is with that is you end up with violence and riots and worse, and revolution, which is very, very likely. I mean, we were close to revolution in this country, just politically, and I'm not making any political declarations. I'm just saying we were already close to that. Right now, we're seeing people kind of put that stuff a little bit to the side for not on the news, but real people. But tetanus, botulism, salmonella, longhorn taking the front to getting milked. Yeah, I've milked a longhorn before, and believe you me, that is not something that you want to do if you don't have to. People today have become expert consumers, tasters of every pleasure, looking forward to the next iPhone or viewing a myriad of reviews of countless products. That's right. And this can come across as like a rant against civilization, and somehow I'm a Ned Ludd out here. Oh, you city people. That's the problem. It's all I'm doing is saying facts, and they know it. Anybody who's listening to this knows that what I'm saying is the truth. The one thing I would add is that the more dependent you are, the more arrogant you are. And so the most arrogant people are the people who are completely dissolved or baptized in normalcy bias. The more you're in it, the more you are self-righteous about not only what you are owed, not only how special you are, and how these people out there who are acting irrationally, these people out there who are buying things and now I can't get them. I just watched a video. I kid you not. You cannot write irony as good as this, where the woman said, we realized that we needed these things and we had to have them. Luckily, we went and got them before the panic buying set in. You see, every individual is capable of justifying and rationalizing any behavior. These are the same people who will sit back and say they were panic buying. We were intelligently examining our needs and taking care of those needs while stuff was available. You see, I had a guy this morning got on my Facebook, and I had basically said what I just said on a Facebook post, and he's like, "This is the biggest load of bull crap I've ever read." And of course, he's a crypto socialist moron whose entire experience at examining the supply chain is that he's a greeter at Walmart for 6 months. and he cannot tell the difference between panic buying and coronavirus and what happens every Black Friday after Thanksgiving. It's like somebody becomes an expert at, even though I wrote a book about it and written more books than this guy's read in his life. He's an expert on the supply chain because he saw two people fighting over a pillow or something like that. The fact is that most people that went out and bought toilet paper did so intelligently because they, even though I would not have done it, and I don't think it's the best use of funds, they did so because that's all they knew. They didn't know any different. They sat there and thought, what will we not like to run out of? Toilet paper. First thing they thought of. They don't know any. You have to have information. You have to have knowledge to know better than that. And they don't know better than that. And so they went and did what these people that were like, I'm not going to participate with the masses and run out there and get toilet paper. And then, you see them 2 weeks later and they're like, well, there's none left for us because we didn't get any. And then after that, they're like, oh, praise the Lord. Our church brought us some toilet paper. Praise the Lord. My neighbor brought me some toilet paper. Who's the dumb one? Who's the dumb one in this picture? And so, that's just kind of where we are. And the problem I'm having is on these YouTubes where I sit here and tell the truth and I talk about what's actually happening right now, is that fewer and fewer and fewer people are interested in hearing it because right now, because of normalcy bias, they think things are just about to be over. Like we're a week or two from getting out from under this, and we don't want to talk about it anymore. We want to watch Netflix, and the new series is about to get released, and things are just going to go back to normal. They're going to take care of it. Started gathering up resources in January, February. Absolutely. Anybody who could read should have known how people are going to react and should have got buckets. We got buckets. Salt, already had salt. Filtration methods, good idea. Seeds and so on. I just got a shipment of seeds in. I already had some seeds, but I was concerned since I wasn't planning on planting this year that some of our seeds might not have been good. So I ordered seeds, just got them in yesterday. Yeah, our ground is thawed. We could be putting stuff in right now. Not that we're past our last freeze. We usually get an Easter freeze, but we're going to be putting gardens in this week. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things going on at the farm. But most people who are intelligent, engaged, understood what was happening and understood what they needed to do. And a lot of people out there were. My point I was making that I want to get back to is that there's a self-righteousness in ignorance. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And basically Dunning-Kruger is that the less you know, the more you think that what you know is all there is to know. And so the more arrogant or self-righteous you are. And that is really where we are right now is there's this Dunning-Kruger mixed with normalcy bias. And most people that you talk to, they're like in a little cocktail of those two things. And so nobody is going to come on here and say, thank you, Michael Bunker, for telling us the truth. Thank you, Michael Bunker, for 10 years ago writing a book about this very thing and talking about societies and civilizations and what happens to them and what's really, that's not going to happen. Nobody's going to do that because they're automatically thinking, things are going to get back to normal. Things are just going to magically. Maybe it is. I hope it is. I hope tomorrow we wake up and they're like, hey, we fixed it. Well, thank you for saying thank you. That's appreciated. I think that most people are not, but like I said, I need to get a drink of water. I'm dehydrated because I'm of my fitness thing. Anyways, yeah, it'd be great if it was tomorrow. It'd be great if they called me up and they said, hey, we got this thing handled. We're going to start your movie up again. And, come fall, I'm being in a movie. Well, thank you. That's nice of you. I do hear a little bit about it changing people's lives. That's always nice to hear. So, all right, I'm here for your questions. I'm kind of done with my spiel. You know where we are. don't think that if over the next week things seem to lighten up, that the grocery stores have more stuff, don't think that that's a dead cat bounce, man. Don't think that things are better, because they're not. Uh, epistemologically, fundamentally, thank you, Pat. Things are not better. Uh, they are provably worse. And so we will see. I'm as hopeful. I'm praying that things are going to get better, but I'm prepared if they are not. So what I'm waiting for is any questions. I'm going to give it just a few minutes, because I know you can type in questions now and I can read them. If you have questions, comments, topics, things you want to talk about, I want to tell every one of you right now, every one of you that's on here, to please, if subscribe, if you're not subscribed, but like this video and put a comment after we're done. Come in and put a comment on there or whatever. Those things add to the YouTube algorithm, and it's going to help me get more watch hours, get more recommended videos and whatnot. I'm really trying to build up this channel, which is why I'm doing the YouTube live right here for you all rather than on Facebook. I love my Facebook peeps, and a lot of you are my Facebook peeps, but I really need to build up this channel. I think I was up to 3,100 watch hours, which is great. To get monetized, you got to hit 4,000 watch hours within rolling 365 days. And so I need subscribers. I need you to share the videos. I need you to like them. I need you to hit the bell after you subscribe and tell them that you want to see all the notifications. That really helps. But do all that for me, and that's the way you could pay me back. What would you advise to those who want to change now? First step. First thing you got to do is educate yourself. If you've already read my book, then you know what you should know. You know those things. Then you have to start with the questions, which is you need to find out the susceptibility of your situation, where you live, how you live, what things you have that are deficient, so that you can, you have to start some form of production, whether that's a small garden, whether that's animals, whether that's, a craft or something like that. But you also have to start remedying your weaknesses. You have to find where your weaknesses are. Learn the bunker principle. There's a video about a week ago called the bunker principle. Please learn it, and that will allow you to ask your questions about water, heat, light, food, all of those things that are necessary. And then as you ask those questions, it will open up a plethora of other ideas and things that will eventually, you will get a clear view of your situation. I think that was one of the cattle bumping into the office. You'll get a clear view of your situation, and that will help you make decisions as you go forward. We are rural, but none of our neighbors live like us. It is so hard to talk to them. I think this current situation may make a way. Okay. People are listening. I don't think, decolonizing your mind is the main thing that you got. That's the very first step. But yeah, I think, there's some people that are listening. There are people that are listening to me now who were ridiculing me 10, 15 years ago. I mentioned this on an earlier video. My wife and I both were ridiculed by family members and stuff we heard that came back around. We were, passive aggressive comments and things like that. But some of those people are listening now, and hopefully they're going to learn something. I hope more people come to the conclusion that it's not somebody else's job to ensure your perpetual 72-degree womb of comfort. That it's your job to help yourself, to help others, and to stabilize your area so that you are capable of being a force for good in the world and not just a parasitical consumer. And so I'm hoping that's the direction. And there's things you can do in town. I'm not telling everybody you got to homestead. You don't have to be an off-gridder. You don't have to do any of the stuff I'm doing. But there's things that you can do. Being prepared is one of the best things that you can do. Use this as an impetus to learn where your weaknesses are. When you start producing for yourself, people always look at you as weird. Yeah. In fact, nowadays, prior to this event, it was cultish. If there was more than one of you preparing, it was a cult. If you were producing anything, you were some whack job, essential oils, slick salesman or something like that. I mean, people wanted to go to the farmer's market and buy your stuff, but they all thought you were weird. And all we've ever said is we're just trying to live normally historically. Yeah. Once you're outside of the what they consider normal, then you're otherized. All right, so get some questions in, comments. We're already past an hour, and I try to keep these shorter than an hour because it really hurts people actually clicking on the video to watch it when it's longer than an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Appreciate you guys. We'll do this again soon. Now that I know that I can do a YouTube live, I'll still do them on Facebook, but I'm going to do them here too. Just makes it a lot easier, and hopefully more people will be able to participate. So appreciate it all. We love you guys. Hope to see you all soon. Like the video. I'm going to put some stuff down in the comment section when I actually upload this, and then good talking to y'all, and I'll talk to you again real soon.